Hello and welcome new sales team members to the team. Today we are going to talk about spin selling and its most critical points, which are going to be, the things that can go wrong, misconceptions about objections, and what to cover in your sales presentations. So the first thing is making sure you ask the right questions in the right order. A lot of new sales professionals go wrong when meeting with prospects in these areas, which would be like asking too many situation or problem questions. That just shows you haven't done enough research before your sales call or presentation, and it makes it less engaging. The situation and problem questions really just are there to identify what is going on for your customer or your buyer. And when you ask so many situation questions nowadays in, modern times, this information should be available to you on the internet. It is not difficult to find. You should already have the answers to those questions before you make your sales call. There's some other things that go wrong when meeting with prospects for your first time, which should be identifying the pain points of your customer. Again, that would be like an answering a question, one of the problem questions. When you go to make your sales call, you should already know the pain points that they're experiencing. Again, it's really easy to find that kind of information online on the internet. When you're figuring out how big the company you're about to meet with is, when you're seeing what kind of vendors they use, a lot of this information is readily available. And another thing is that salespeople often overdo their advantages, and that typically creates more objections. So you're kind of giving your customer more to work off of, more to ask questions about, but sometimes things that they don't actually have questions about prior to your sales meeting. You really need to figure out the buyer's needs before you go all in with the advantages, because they're less effective at the end of your sales process. They're really only essential when first presenting your solution. So the next thing that is important to the spin selling is that there are many misconceptions about the objections that a salesperson receives. A lot of the time this is due to not actively listening to what your customer is saying. Again, the misconceptions are pretty much inevitable. You cannot avoid them with any presentation. When you're giving someone an option, they're going to have questions about it and objections about price and everything else like that, like time. So really there's two types of objections, and the first one is value, which is just when the buyer doesn't recognize the return on their investment, which basically means that the buyer does not understand why your solution is going to cost so much. Really, the easiest way to prevent this kind of question is asking, who their current supplier is, or what their budget is first for the solution that they're looking for. And then the next type of objection is capability, which is where the buyer actually doubts that your product can help them. And this, in my opinion, this type of objection is much harder to prevent, because you can't please everyone, and it is hard to explain sometimes, why certain things meet their need. It's a lot easier if you know what they're looking for going into the sales call, like I said prior, to identify their pain points before asking them what their problems are or their situation, which you can do before the sales call often. It's more important to prevent these types of objections rather than to handle them. You can prevent them by asking implication questions and need payoff questions before furthering their problem. Sometimes that kind of spirals out of control. The goal is to ultimately help the buyer understand why they need the product or service, which is easier to do when you know the implications that they may face as a result of not buying that solution that you're offering. And then the next part is what to cover in your sales presentation, which is really just how to align the prospect's needs with the product's features. The feature advantage benefit formula, I think, is the most useful way to do this. It's super, super simple, and it kind of, it states, because of this feature, I can have this advantage, which means I can get this benefit out of it. So for example, if because I have this chicken, I will be able to eat it and get protein out of it, and because of that, I will be full. So if you can kind of think of your product in the same way as that kind of simple, really, just basic benefit of eating type of thing, and you can get them to confirm their understanding of the benefit, they'll be much more likely to buy the product because they can align their needs with the features themselves. And getting them to say that out loud is really important too, because otherwise sometimes they don't recognize that, especially if you're not asking the questions in the right order. Like if you identify the situation or the problem after you identify the benefit of the product, if you do those kinds of things backwards, it's really difficult to get them to understand the process and which things are in which order. So again, just to review, the most critical points of the Spin Selling novel by Neil Rackham are identifying where most salespeople go wrong and asking the wrong questions, active listening and what objections there are and how not using active listening creates objections, and then aligning the needs of the customer and the product's features, which is really how you can cover all of your bases in your sales presentation. So thank you so much for watching my Spin Selling video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.